Okay, let's just think about this for a second. A world with no modern scalpels, no lasers, no real anesthetics. How on earth did ancient physicians deal with the really difficult surgical problems? Well, today we're going to dive right into a classical Ayurvedic text, chapter 30 to be exact, to uncover two powerful and frankly pretty intense tools that they considered their ultimate weapons. Let's see how they did it.
So our guide for this is the Ashtanga Hridya. It's a foundational text of Ayurveda written centuries and centuries ago. We're zeroing in on chapter 30 because that's where things get really advanced and, yeah, really high stakes. This isn't just some dusty old history book. It's a look into a super sophisticated system of medicine, one that thought very deeply about what it was doing.
So this was the big problem they were up against. A sharp knife is great, for sure. But what do you do when a disease is lodged way deep inside the body, in a place that's dangerous or just plain impossible to get to with the blade? How do you get rid of a problem from its very root without having to literally cut your way there? That was the challenge.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into that surgical challenge. Then we'll explore their two ultimate weapons, a potent substance called kshara and a technique using fire itself, known as Agni Karma. We'll even check out how they were made. And to wrap it all up, we'll talk about the huge responsibility that came with wielding all that power.
Okay, first up, the ancient surgical challenge. Let's really get into why they needed to think beyond just a simple knife.
You know, the Ashtanga Hridya is really upfront about this. It basically says, look, some problems are just too tricky or in the wrong spot for our normal tools. But here's what's so cool. That wasn't a dead end for them. It was a sign that they needed a totally different, and honestly, a much more powerful kind of solution.
And that brings us to their number one answer. And get this, it wasn't a sharper knife. It was a potent chemical substance they called kshara.
I mean, just read that statement. The sheer confidence is incredible. The text doesn't say kshara is good, it says it's the best, better than all the other instruments combined. That's a massive claim. So what in the world was this stuff that could outperform an entire surgical toolkit?
So kshara is a caustic alkali. It's a super alkaline paste that's made from the ashes of very specific plants. You can kind of think of it as a form of chemical surgery. Its whole purpose was to do the job of a scalpel, like cutting and removing tissue, but without a physical blade. It was meant to reach those deep-seated issues and, as the text says, fix them completely.
And this wasn't just some crude, corrosive stuff. The perfect kshara was all about balance and precision. The text lists 10 qualities, and you can see a theme here. It's all about control. It had to be strong, but not too strong. It had to spread, but also stay exactly where you put it. Effective, but without causing a ton of pain. This wasn't guesswork. It was a deep, practical understanding of chemistry.
So here's the bottom line. Kshara was like the ultimate multi-tool. It could do the work of a knife and the work of fire, which we'll get to in a minute. The claim was that it could literally pull diseases out from their source, suggesting a deep, curative action that went way beyond the surface.
Now, a substance this sophisticated doesn't just grow on trees. It had to be meticulously crafted. The process itself was really a blend of ancient art and science.
The whole process was basically ancient chemistry. First, they'd gathered specific plants, roots, branches, the whole shebang. Then they'd burn them to ash in a controlled pit, away from the wind. Now here's where it gets wild. They'd mix that ash with water or even cow's urine and filter it through a cloth, 21 times. Then they'd take that super purified liquid and carefully heat it in an iron pan, boiling it down until all that was left was this potent, reddish, clear substance.
But kshara wasn't the only powerful tool in their arsenal. For some conditions, ancient physicians turned to an even more elemental force, fire itself. This practice was called Agni Karma.
Agni Karma is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, thermal cautery. The idea is to apply controlled heat from an instrument to get a therapeutic result. And yeah, it might sound pretty brutal to us today, but it was seen as a highly effective, even superior treatment for certain kinds of ailments.
And this is where you really see the sophistication of the system. The text says that diseases treated with Agni Karma were believed to not come back. It was seen as the better choice for issues with the skin, muscles, ligaments, and joints. This just shows they weren't using these powerful tools randomly. They had a clear diagnostic reason for choosing chemical cautery over thermal cautery.
And just like with kshara, precision was everything. The text carefully lays out the signs of a proper burn versus an improper one.
A successful procedure would stop bleeding, make a distinct crackling sound, and leave a wound of a specific dark gray color that would heal well with little pain. An improper burn, on the other hand, caused severe pain and had to be corrected. This wasn't just a shot in the dark, it was a highly developed clinical skill.
This brings us to our final and maybe most important point. These techniques were incredibly powerful, but with that power came huge risks and an even bigger responsibility.
Let's be really clear about this. Shara and Agni Karma were last resorts. They were safe for the conditions that were otherwise incurable. They demanded immense skill, courage, and a rock-steady hand from the physician. These were the heavy artillery of ancient medicine.
And this quote just perfectly captures the gravity of it all. The text compares the surgeon's three most powerful tools, the knife, the alkali, and fire, to the weapons of death itself. It's such a sobering reminder that these instruments had the power to harm just as much as they could heal, and the physician had to use them with the absolute greatest care and wisdom.
So when we look back at these ancient practices, we're not just seeing primitive methods. We're seeing a system that understood its own limits, that innovated powerful solutions, and that grappled with the incredible responsibilities of medicine. It really makes you wonder, how does this ancient understanding of such high-stakes treatments reshape our view of what early medicine was really all about?